Ever felt torn between work deadlines and family time? Most mornings, the internal soundtrack to my life isn't just the gentle hum of the coffee maker. It's a discordant symphony of competing demands, a kind of internal cacophony that seems to start even before the alarm fully registers. You know the feeling, don't you? That persistent, low-grade tug-of-war that kicks off the day before the sun has fully committed to rising, before the first sip of hot coffee has even had a chance to properly wake you up. For me, in my world of servers and sprints, it often looks precisely like this. One hand, still a little stiff from sleep and perhaps hovering over the snooze button a moment too long, is now hovering over the laptop keyboard. I'm trying to swiftly close out a critical ticket, a last-minute bug fix, a crucial report that needs to hit the boss's inbox before our daily stand-up call kicks off. The clock is ticking. The pressure is real, and the mental gears are already grinding into high alert. Simultaneously, or perhaps just a breath later, the other hand, almost reflexively, is pouring milk into my daughter's cereal bowl, navigating the delicate balance of not spilling. Her small voice, utterly oblivious to the digital inferno brewing on my screen, cuts through my pre-dawn focus with a simple, yet profoundly loaded question. Dad, will you have time to play with me later today? It's a simple question, isn't it? Innocent, earnest, and completely devoid of malice. Yet it immediately highlights the chasm, the vast expanse, between the urgent task demanding my full, immediate, unblinking attention, the very thing that ostensibly pays the bills, and the profound, long-term, immeasurable investment that is building connection, nurturing a relationship, and simply being present for my child. That pull between today's pressing, insistent urgency and tomorrow's enduring, essential meaning, it never really goes away. Does it? It simply reshapes itself, morphs its form, moving from the breakfast table to the endless email thread that keeps pinging, from the complex architectural diagram I'm trying to visualize to the grocery list that needs to be updated, from a client emergency that requires immediate intervention to a sudden plumbing leak that demands immediate home repair. Each moment, each hour, each day feels like a tiny negotiation, an internal debate, a constant reprioritization over where my limited mental bandwidth, my even more limited physical presence, and my precious finite energy should be allocated. And the truth is, most days I feel like I'm losing that negotiation, or at best, ending in a perpetual stalemate, constantly running just a little bit behind, always feeling like I'm letting someone or something down. The mental acrobatics required to context switch from a highly complex technical problem, requiring intense logical focus, to a child's simple emotionally charged query, and then back again to the problem, is utterly exhausting. You try to be fully present in both. You genuinely do, but the residue of the previous task always seems to cling to your mind, like static electricity or a faint, lingering echo. You're ostensibly answering an important email, but half listening, distracted, to your partner recounting their day. You're reading a bedtime book to your kids, giving it your best effort, but a part of your brain is already mentally drafting a reply to a colleague, troubleshooting a pending issue, or fretting over a looming deadline. It's a constant state of being pulled in 2, 3, sometimes even 4 directions simultaneously, your internal compass spinning wildly. The very idea of balance, that mythical state of serene equilibrium, feels like a cruel joke, a distant, unreachable ideal we're all relentlessly chasing, but never quite catching. It's more like a persistent wobble, an ongoing, frantic effort to simply stay upright, to maintain some semblance of control amidst the unpredictable gusts of incoming requests, unexpected demands, and unforeseen crises that define modern life. This isn't just about time management, though that's certainly a very significant part of it. It's about the deeper psychological toll of living in a world that constantly demands both immediate, quantifiable results and long-term vision, often in the same breath. It asks us to be agile, responsive, and innovative, perpetually seeking out the next big thing, while simultaneously asking us to be steady, empathetic, and purposefully grounded in our values. It's the inherent paradox of modern professional and personal life, especially for those of us juggling careers, families, community responsibilities, and all the myriad other commitments that come with being an adult in the 21st century. We're expected to be the unshakable rock in the storm at work, guiding projects, managing expectations, and leading people. And then, with barely a transition, instantly transform into the soft, nurturing place to land at home, offering comfort, presence, and unwavering support. The lines between work time and personal time have not just blurred, they've often become completely indistinguishable. Not just because of the pervasive nature of technology that connects us 24/7, but because the very nature of our roles, our responsibilities, and our own internal drivers often demands an always-on, always-aware state of being. That feeling of always being on call, even when you're technically off the clock, it's pervasive, isn't it? You might be at a park with your kids on a precious weekend afternoon, pushing them on the swings, laughing at their joy, but your phone is buzzing discreetly in your pocket, and a little insidious part of your brain is already formulating a response, prioritizing the notification, mentally troubleshooting a potential issue. You're physically there, your body present, but mentally, you're halfway in another meeting, another crisis, another looming task. It's not just the external demands that create this overwhelming tension. It's often our own deeply ingrained desire to do well, to meet every expectation, to be competent and valued in every single domain of our lives. We want to be the dependable colleague, the supportive partner, the engaged present parent, the friend who always shows up. And that powerful internal drive, that relentless pursuit of excellence across all fronts, can often exacerbate the feeling of being stretched thin because we constantly set the bar higher and higher for ourselves, even when the underlying resources, our time, our energy, our finite capacity for focus, are, by their very nature, limited. So we end up feeling fragmented, like we're giving a piece of ourselves to everyone and everything, but never quite a whole, undivided self to any one thing. We see the urgent tasks scream for immediate attention, demanding our focus with an almost violent insistence. And we know, intellectually, that the important foundational work, the deep, uninterrupted work, the intentional relationship building, the critical self-care, is quietly waiting, often getting pushed to the side, relegated to the ever-receding promise of later. But later too often turns into never, swallowed by the next wave of urgency. It's a dynamic that can leave us feeling perpetually behind, perpetually guilty, perpetually exhausted, and perpetually searching for a better, more sustainable way to navigate this complex, demanding terrain of modern existence. It's this very human experience, this persistent, almost inescapable tension between opposing forces, that is precisely what the systems leader speaks to. It offers not a magic bullet, but a fresh, profound perspective on how we can not just survive, but truly thrive, find meaning, and cultivate resilience in a world that constantly asks us to be many, often contradictory things at once. It acknowledges the struggle, and then offers a path to navigating it with greater wisdom and steadiness. Part 2. Embracing Paradox, the Core of Systems Leadership. And that's precisely where this book, The Systems Leader, truly steps in, offering not so much a simplistic, easy solution to all of our daily struggles, but rather a profound and frankly liberating framework for understanding and, more importantly, for navigating this constant state of flux that we all seem to live in. It's a book that, in my estimation, isn't just for those with leader in their official job title, mind you. I found myself thinking of it more as a practical guide to simply being a resilient and effective human in a complex world, especially when everything around you, from the minutiae of your overflowing inbox to the grand long-term plans for your life, feels like an intractable paradox. You know those moments, don't you? Where you're presented with two seemingly irreconcilable options, two compelling yet opposing demands, and you instinctively feel pressured, almost compelled, to pick one, to declare a winner, to make an either-or choice, because that's what feels decisive and clear in the moment. This book fundamentally challenges that deeply ingrained impulse. It argues that true, effective leadership, whether you're at the helm of a multinational corporation, leading a small, agile team in an intense sprint, or simply guiding your own small family unit through the daily ebb and flow of life, isn't about choosing one side of attention and abandoning the other. Instead, it's about cultivating the capacity to hold both. It's about building the internal fortitude to exist comfortably, or at least constructively, within that inherent discomfort, recognizing that this is the defining characteristic of our modern existence, not a flaw to be eliminated. The book posits that this isn't just a theoretical exercise, it's the defining characteristic of effective systems leaders. They don't shy away from paradox. They embrace it as the very fabric of reality, finding strength and wisdom in its dynamic nature. Take, for instance, the classic dilemma between hitting those urgent short-term targets, that critical sprint deadline, that unexpected client request demanding immediate attention, the sudden need to put out a blazing fire in a production environment, and simultaneously nurturing long-term innovation, the kind of deep, exploratory work that doesn't show immediate returns, but is absolutely vital for future growth, sustained relevance, and foundational stability. In my own world, this often translates to the intense pressure of getting that urgent IT ticket resolved right now, because a critical system is down, people are blocked, and revenue might be at stake. Yet, in the back of my mind, there's always the need to dedicate time to exploring new technologies, refining core processes, or investing in architectural improvements that could prevent such outages entirely down the line. One screams for immediate attention, often with visible, quantifiable metrics attached to its completion and direct consequences if missed. The other whispers promises of future stability, efficiency, and competitive advantage, but its impact is harder to measure in the next quarterly review, making it easy to defer. We are conditioned, often by corporate culture, by immediate consequences, and by the sheer human desire for quick wins, to prioritize the scream, aren't we? This book says no, you need to find a way to honor both. It's not an either-or situation that forces a sacrifice. It's a both-and imperative. It asks us to consider how we can deliver on today's pressing demands without entirely sacrificing tomorrow's potential, recognizing that true, lasting success is built upon both foundations, not just one. And it's not just about tasks and projects. The book's insights extend profoundly to how we interact with people, too. It delves into the tension of showing strength and empathy, another one of those seemingly contradictory pairings that often trips us up, leaving us feeling like we're constantly failing one side or the other. How do you, for instance, hold people accountable to high standards, set clear boundaries, and make tough decisions when necessary? Perhaps delivering difficult feedback to a team member or enforcing a challenging policy, while also fostering an environment of genuine care, understanding, and psychological safety where people feel valued and heard. You see this delicate dance play out so often in parenting, don't you? You want to be firm, to teach discipline, responsibility, and the consequences of actions, establishing a clear framework for behavior and growth. But you also desperately want to be the warm, understanding figure who listens without judgment, who offers comfort, who validates emotions and provides a safe harbor for exploration and vulnerability. It's a tightrope walk that can feel exhausting, and the systems leader suggests that instead of oscillating wildly between these two poles, feeling like you have to be one or the other, we can learn to integrate them, to embody both strength and empathy in our approach. It's about recognizing that true strength often emerges from a deep well of empathy, allowing you to understand the underlying needs and motivations. And that empathy, without a backbone of clear expectations and accountability, can sometimes become ineffective or even enabling. The book also touches on the equally potent tension of maintaining a global vision while simultaneously adapting to local realities. In the corporate world, this might mean setting overarching company goals, a universal brand message, and strategic objectives, while empowering local teams to tailor their approach to specific market needs, cultural nuances, and regional regulations. It's about recognizing that a rigid, one-size-fits-all approach often fails in a diverse and dynamic world. In our personal lives, this could manifest as having a grand, aspirational vision for your family's future, a certain lifestyle, long-term educational goals, core values you want to instill and pass down, while also being flexible enough to adapt to the unexpected curveballs that daily life inevitably throws your way. The sudden change in school plans, the unexpected job opportunity that requires relocation, or just the simple fact that what worked perfectly for one child might be completely ineffective for another. It's about understanding the big picture, the overarching purpose, but never losing sight of the immediate, tangible ground beneath your feet, recognizing that the ideal must often be adapted to the real, the practical, and the unique circumstances. What I particularly appreciated about The Systems Leader is that it steers clear of suggesting that some kind of heroic, superhuman effort is required to manage all these paradoxes. It's not about finding a magical static balance, which, frankly, always feels like a mythical creature we're all chasing, but never quite catching. Instead, it frames it as less about being a perfect juggler who never drops a ball, and more about cultivating a steady practice under pressure. It's about developing the mental muscle memory, the consistent habits, the inner resilience to operate effectively when these tensions are inevitably present, which, let's be honest, is almost all the time. This perspective really resonated with me because I, like many of us, often fall into the trap of thinking there's a single right answer, a definitive path that will cleanly resolve all the competing demands. This book offers a different lens. The tension itself isn't the problem to be eliminated, but rather the enduring reality to be embraced and leveraged. It's about building the internal capacity to hold these paradoxes, not just intellectually, but emotionally and practically. It acknowledges that the world isn't simple, and our approach to navigating it shouldn't pretend otherwise. It encourages a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation, understanding that the solution for today might need to shift for tomorrow. So, instead of constantly striving for an impossible stillness, it guides you toward finding your footing within the dynamic, sometimes turbulent currents of life and work. It's less about avoiding the storm, and more about learning to sail through it with a steady hand, recognizing that the wind will always blow from multiple directions, and that your strength comes from your ability to adjust your sails accordingly, always keeping your ultimate destination in mind. Part 3, one of the most powerful and, frankly, most liberating ideas that truly sank in for me from The Systems Leader is this insistent drumbeat that modern life, especially modern leadership, and I use that term broadly, for anyone trying to navigate complex situations, can't escape paradox. It's not a bug, it's a fundamental characteristic of the world we inhabit. The book doesn't just acknowledge this inherent tension. It practically shouts that our task is to learn to operate in the both-and, rather than falling into the comfortable but often misleading trap of the either-or. We are constantly pushed to choose. Do we prioritize short-term gain or long-term vision? Immediate results or foundational investment? Do we make decisions based on today's urgent metrics or tomorrow's sustainable growth? It's a false dichotomy, a kind of mental shortcut that the world, and sometimes our own stressed minds, so frequently presents to us as the only options. The book argues with compelling clarity that true efficacy, true resilience, and genuine impact lie not in picking one over the other, but in holding both, in understanding that these aren't opposing forces meant to tear you apart, but rather complementary energies that, when managed well, can propel you forward in a more holistic and sustainable way. This insight resonated so deeply with a lot of the Stoic thinking I've spent time with over the years. It immediately brought to mind the wisdom of Epictetus, who taught that we simply don't control the external pulls and pushes of the world. We don't get to choose whether deadlines exist, or whether our child will ask for playtime at an inconvenient moment, or whether a critical bug will surface just as you're about to log off for the day. Those things happen. They are external. They are outside of our direct control, part of the indifferent flow of events. What we do control, however, is our response, our judgment, our attitude toward these events, toward these persistent tensions. The Stoic way isn't to fight against the current of these inevitable paradoxes, to rail against the unfairness of having to juggle so much. Instead, it's to accept them not as obstacles to be removed, but as a rigorous training ground for our own inner faculties, for our judgment, our resilience, our ability to think clearly under pressure, and our capacity for practical wisdom. For me, this both-and manifests most tangibly in my day job, especially when I'm deep in the trenches of a development cycle. I often find myself coding late into the night, pushing to meet a sprint deadline, knowing that a critical feature or a bug fix needs to ship by morning. That's the urgent, short-term goal, the quarterly target that demands immediate attention. It's a very real pressure with very real consequences if not met. But even as my fingers fly across the keyboard, a part of my mind, honed by years of seeing things go wrong, is also wrestling with a longer-term question. How does this new code fit into the overall architecture? Is it robust enough that it won't break 6 months down the line when the system scales unexpectedly? Am I creating tech debt, temporary fixes, or less than ideal solutions that future me or some other poor soul on the team will have to pay with extra work and complications, or even system instability? It's a constant internal dialogue, a silent negotiation that runs beneath the surface of the immediate task. Do I cut a corner now to hit the deadline, knowing it creates a potential vulnerability for tomorrow? Or do I take the extra hour to refactor, to design more elegantly, to write those additional tests that truly harden the system, knowing it might push the deadline perilously close or even slightly over? The either-or mind would simplistically frame this as deadline or quality. But the both-and mindset, so powerfully encouraged by the systems leader and echoed by Stoic wisdom, urges me to seek the synthesis, to integrate these seemingly contradictory demands. It's not about choosing one and abandoning the other, but about finding the optimal path that respects both constraints. It means being acutely aware of the immediate pressure, the very real need for a solution now, but never letting that completely eclipse the long-term implications, the need for a stable and maintainable system. This requires a certain kind of disciplined thinking, a mental agility that can hold two seemingly contradictory truths in tension. It means consciously stepping back, even in the thick of urgency, to consider the wider impact of my immediate actions. It means having the discernment to know when a quick fix can be the right answer, but only if done with full awareness of its temporary nature and, crucially, an explicit plan to address it properly later. It also means having the courage, honed by that inner conviction, to push back, gently but firmly, if the short-term demand will truly compromise the long-term health of the system beyond reasonable repair. This acceptance, this embracing of tension as a given, isn't a passive resignation. It's an active engagement with reality, a deliberate choice of perspective. Epictetus would say that while we cannot control the external events, we can always control our inner response, our prohairesis, our faculty of choice. So when the urgent deadline clashes with the long-term architectural health, the Stoic approach, as illuminated by the systems leader, isn't to bemoan the situation, or wish it away, or fall into a spiral of frustration. It's to see it as an opportunity to practice virtue, to exercise good judgment, to demonstrate prudence in our decision-making, to be resilient in the face of pressure, and to act with integrity even when expediency calls loudest. It means building the mental fortitude to hold two seemingly contradictory ideas in your mind simultaneously, and to discern the path that aligns with your values and long-term purpose, even if it feels uncomfortable in the short run. It's about being thoughtful rather than purely reactive. It's about building a muscle for discernment, for seeing not just the immediate consequence, but the ripple effects that extend far into the future. This daily grind, these small internal battles over priorities, these are the proving grounds. Each time I consciously try to integrate the both and, each time I choose to honor both the pressing need and the enduring principle, I'm not just getting better at my job, I'm actually honing my character. I'm becoming a more deliberate, more thoughtful person, someone who can stand firm amid the competing demands without being tossed about by them. It's not about achieving a perfect state of equilibrium, that mythical balance, but about developing the inner steadiness to dance with the disequilibrium, to find a sense of purpose and direction within the swirling chaos. It's a practice, not a destination, and the tension itself becomes the very teacher you need to grow. Part 4, valuing people as the core of systemic resilience. Moving on from that crucial both-and mindset, that capacity to hold paradoxical tensions simultaneously, recognizing our complex world demands integration rather than simple choices. Another theme that really resonated with me from the systems leader is this profound perspective. People aren't just costs to be cut or resources to be exploited. Instead, they are, in fact, the fundamental foundation of resilience within any system. Be it a corporate team striving for innovation, a community navigating change, or even the intricate ecosystem of our own family life. The book presents this not just as a feel-good sentiment or a soft skill for HR, but as an undeniable strategic imperative. It argues that instead of viewing employees as transient expenses, constantly looking for cheaper alternatives, quick replacements, or seeing their needs as inconvenient drains on finite resources, great leaders, and by extension, anyone building a sustainable, thriving system, understand that actively investing in people through reskilling, through continuous development, through genuine care and empathetic listening, preserves invaluable institutional knowledge. This deep investment significantly boosts morale, fosters loyalty, and often, quite practically, costs less in the long run than the constant churn of hiring, onboarding, and training new talent. It fundamentally reframes our understanding of who and what truly drives adaptability and strength in times of relentless change and uncertainty. This insight, this deep appreciation for the human element, immediately brought to mind the timeless wisdom of the Stoics, particularly the writings of Marcus Aurelius. He often wrote about the human community as a single, organic whole, a collective endeavor, reminding us with poignant simplicity that what is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee. It's a simple, yet profoundly powerful truth that echoes through the ages and across all scales of human organization. The well-being of the individual is inextricably linked to the well-being of the collective. If the beehive is struggling, if its workers are unwell, unappreciated, under-equipped, or constantly replaced, then no single bee, no matter how industrious or talented, can truly thrive in isolation. You simply cannot have a healthy, productive, and resilient system without healthy, engaged, supported, and continuously developing components. And in human systems, those components are, of course, people. In my own career in tech, I've seen this play out vividly, sometimes for the better, but often, unfortunately, for the worse. There have been times, particularly during periods of intense pressure, economic uncertainty, or aggressive cost-cutting measures, where the immediate impulse from leadership has been to see people purely as line items on a budget sheet, as a cost center to be minimized. The quickest way to reduce expenses, or so the short-sighted logic goes, is to trim headcount, to push people harder, or to replace experienced workers with cheaper, less experienced ones. I've witnessed firsthand the devastating impact of this mindset on teams. Burnout skyrockets, morale plummets to subterranean levels, and a pervasive sense of insecurity, fear, and distrust settles in like a thick, chilling fog. When people feel disposable, when they perceive themselves as merely a number or a temporary resource, they naturally stop investing themselves fully. They become cautious, reluctant to innovate, unwilling to take necessary risks, and are far more likely to leave at the first opportunity that offers even a glimmer of stability or appreciation. The invaluable institutional knowledge, the unique understanding of complex systems, the undocumented processes, the nuanced client relationships, the quiet wisdom built from years of experience, all walks out the door with them, leaving critical gaps that are incredibly difficult, expensive, and time-consuming to fill. You end up in a constant, exhausting state of recruitment and re-onboarding, which, while seeming like a short-term cost saver on paper, actually becomes a huge long-term drag on productivity, consistency, and the overall health and effectiveness of the system. The quality of the work suffers, innovation stagnates, and the very resilience the organization needs to navigate future challenges is slowly but surely eroded. It becomes a vicious cycle where the short-term win of cost-cutting leads to long-term systemic fragility. But I've also been fortunate enough to work in environments and under leaders who deeply understood this fundamental principle. When time is genuinely spent mentoring junior colleagues, offering opportunities for reskilling in new technologies or methodologies, providing access to professional development, or simply creating a psychologically safe space for people to voice concerns, share ideas, and admit mistakes without fear of reprisal, the difference is palpable. It's about more than just sending someone to a mandatory training course. It's about active listening, about understanding their individual aspirations and challenges, about connecting their personal growth to the larger, shared purpose of the team. I've seen projects succeed against incredible odds Because a leader chose to invest deeply in their people, trusting them with new responsibilities, giving them the tools and the protected time to learn and adapt, and backing them up unequivocally when they inevitably stumbled. In these healthier beehives, the collective grows stronger, more adaptive, more innovative, and far more resilient. People are more engaged, more loyal, and more willing to go the extra mile, to take ownership, and to weather difficult periods because they feel genuinely valued, not just for what they do, but for who they are and who they can become. This investment isn't just humane. It's incredibly practical and strategically brilliant. It's about building a robust, intelligent, and self-repairing system that can withstand shocks, adapt to new realities, and even anticipate future challenges, precisely because its core components, its human elements, are strong, skilled, confident, and deeply committed. You see this dynamic play out just as powerfully, if not more so, in our personal lives, particularly in how we approach our families. Think about raising children. It's easy. In the relentless rush of daily life, in the endless demands for attention, resources, and emotional energy, to sometimes see them simply as demanding entities, another line item on our finite budget of time and patience. But if you deliberately shift that perspective, if you view your children as long-term assets, as unique individuals whose innate potential needs careful nurturing, whose character needs thoughtful shaping, whose trust needs to be earned through consistent presence and investment, the way you allocate your time, your energy, and your emotional attention changes dramatically. It might mean consciously giving up some immediate personal time to sit and listen intently to a rambling story about their day, even when you're utterly exhausted. It might mean patiently teaching them a new skill, even when it would be far quicker and easier to just do it yourself. These aren't just costs on your time or energy. They are profound, compounding investments in their future resilience, their self-confidence, their ability to navigate the complex social and emotional world, and ultimately their capacity for independent thought and action. The return isn't always immediate or easily quantifiable in the short term, but it builds a stronger, more harmonious, and deeply resilient family system in the long run. It's the same in a marriage or a close friendship. If you treat the relationship as something that needs constant maintenance and active investment, time spent connecting, listening, understanding, forgiving, celebrating, it becomes a source of immense strength, profound joy, and unwavering support that enriches your entire life. If you instead view the other person's needs as an inconvenience, a cost on your personal freedom or energy, the relationship will inevitably wither, becoming brittle and shallow. The systems leader viewpoint forces us to confront this inherent paradox, that the very people who can, in the immediate moment, feel like an immediate drain on our finite resources, our time, our patience, our mental energy, are in fact the most critical long-term investment for sustained success, deep satisfaction, and overall well-being. It's about seeing beyond the immediate budget line or the fleeting inconvenience, and instead recognizing the profound lasting value of human capital and genuine connection. This perspective compels us to prioritize cultivating talent, fostering psychological safety, building genuine trust, and creating an environment where every individual feels seen and valued. Understanding that these are not soft skills or optional luxuries, but the hard, indispensable bedrock upon which truly resilient, adaptable, and flourishing systems are built. It encourages us to design systems, be they corporate, communal, or familial, where the well-being of the bee is always considered essential to the enduring health and vitality of the beehive, ensuring that the whole is truly greater than the sum of its parts. Part 5. Anchoring leadership in purpose and trust building, on the idea of valuing people as long-term assets, of understanding that the health and resilience of the beehive ultimately relies on the well-being and engagement of every bee. The third core insight from the systems leader that truly cemented its value for me revolves around the profound and often underestimated importance of purpose and trust, especially when the noise around us gets overwhelming. And let's be honest, in today's interconnected, always-on world, that noise is a constant, deafening hum. We're bombarded by relentless shareholder expectations, the fickle churn of social media trends and viral moments, the ever-shifting sands of public opinion, the demands for instant gratification, and sometimes just the sheer volume of internal team chatter and urgent requests that threaten to pull us in 1,000 different, often conflicting directions. In such an environment, the book posits, true systems leaders don't get swept away by the loudest voice, the latest fad, or the most immediate pressure. Instead, they anchor themselves firmly in a deep, unwavering sense of purpose. This commitment to a clear, articulated why, a fundamental reason for being and doing, allows them to act with remarkable consistency, to make decisions that, while perhaps not always popular or immediately gratifying in the moment, are robustly aligned with a longer-term vision and a steadfast set of core values. This immediately drew my mind to the ancient Stoics, whose writings have become such a constant companion in my own life. Seneca, for instance, frequently warned against placing our hopes and our sense of worth in external validations, the fleeting applause of the crowd, the accumulation of transient wealth, the superficial praise of others. He understood with brutal clarity that these things are inherently unstable, capable of being given and taken away on a whim, entirely beyond our ultimate control. What truly endures, what truly matters, he argued, is the consistency of our character, the integrity of our actions, and our unwavering commitment to our internal principles, our virtues. It's about building what Marcus Aurelius, that emperor philosopher who faced immense daily pressures while leading an empire, referred to as an inner citadel, a fortress of the mind constructed through reason, self-discipline, and virtue, designed to be impervious to the storms of external circumstances and the shifting winds of popular opinion. If I can cultivate that inner clarity, if I can stay clear on why I do what I do, why I code this particular feature, why I lead this team in this specific direction, why I choose to spend my precious time of finite energy on certain tasks or relationships, then the shifting demands, the unexpected crises, the public grandstanding, the internal politics, the endless stream of notifications, they don't shake me as much. Purpose, in this sense, isn't just a high-minded ideal to be printed on a wall plaque and forgotten. It's a profoundly practical, grounding force. It steadies the hand, clarifies the judgment, and provides an internal compass, an unwavering true north in the thickest of fogs. Think about it in the context of my job in IT. There are countless directions I could pull my team and myself in. Every day brings a new fire drill, a tempting new technology to chase, a demand for a quick feature that, upon closer inspection, might not align with the broader product strategy. Without a clear purpose, a deep shared understanding of what fundamental value our team is truly trying to deliver, what core problem we are ultimately solving for our users, it would be incredibly easy to get pulled off course. We'd find ourselves chasing every shiny object, reacting to every urgent plea, and eventually our work would become fragmented, ineffective, and ultimately devoid of meaningful impact. But when I consciously remind myself and my team of our core purpose, to build stable, intuitive, and reliable tools that genuinely empower our users to do their best work, for example, then those daily decisions become clearer, less emotionally charged, and more strategically sound. Does this new feature truly align with that purpose, or is it merely a distraction? Does chasing this new tech stack serve that purpose, or is it just a fleeting trend that will complicate our lives down the line? It allows me to politely but firmly say no to things that don't contribute to that foundational why, and to prioritize the things that do, even if they're not championed by the loudest voices in the room. This deliberate act of aligning actions with purpose saves enormous amounts of wasted effort and prevents the kind of context-switching fatigue and aimless drifting that plagues modern work. This extends profoundly into my family life as well, perhaps even more critically. Parenting is a constant negotiation of immediate needs versus long-term values, of what's easy now versus what builds character and resilience later. When my daughter acts out, or when my son resists bedtime with every fiber of his being, the immediate reactive impulse might be to get frustrated, to snap, or to just give in for the sake of peace and quiet. But if I ground myself in my purpose as a parent, to raise kind, resilient, thoughtful, and independent individuals who understand responsibility and empathy, then my response shifts. Instead of just reacting to the surface behavior, I can try to understand the underlying need, to teach patience, to model calm, to reinforce the values of respect and empathy that I want them to embody. It's not about being a perfect parent because, let's face it, no parent ever is. We all stumble and learn. But it's about having that guiding star, that inner citadel of purpose that helps you navigate the turbulent emotional waters of daily family life without losing your way. It allows for a more consistent, considered approach rather than a purely reactive one. This consistency, born from a deeply held and articulated purpose, is the bedrock upon which genuine trust is built. In a professional setting, when colleagues and teams see that your decisions are consistently guided by a clear, shared purpose, and not by fleeting trends, personal whims, or opportunistic self-interest, they begin to trust you implicitly. They trust your judgment, they trust your intentions, and they trust that you are working towards a common, meaningful goal, even when the path is difficult or unpopular. This trust is an invaluable asset. It reduces friction, fosters genuine collaboration, encourages open communication, and creates a vital sense of psychological safety where people feel comfortable taking calculated risks, sharing innovative ideas, and admitting mistakes because they know they are part of something bigger, something consistently and purposefully led. In our personal lives, it's no different. Children thrive on consistency and predictability, which are direct outputs of a parent's clear purpose and values. When they see that your values are consistent, that your love is unwavering, and that your boundaries, while sometimes inconvenient, are there for their ultimate well-being, their trust in you deepens. This trust isn't just about believing what you say. It's about believing in who you are, in your fundamental reliability and good intent. It's the invisible glue that holds relationships together, especially during times of stress, disagreement, or uncertainty. The systems leader reminds us that in a world clamoring for quick wins, immediate gratification, and superficial metrics, cultivating and communicating a clear purpose, and then consistently acting in unwavering alignment with it, is perhaps the most powerful and enduring act of leadership we can perform. It's a quiet strength, often unseen by those outside the immediate system, but profoundly impactful internally. It allows you to resist the temptation for public grandstanding or chasing superficial accolades because your true validation comes from within, from knowing you are acting in accordance with your deepest values and contributing to something genuinely meaningful and lasting. This inner clarity doesn't eliminate the external pressures or the inherent paradoxes, but it provides an unwavering reference point, making you more adaptable, more resilient, and ultimately more effective in navigating the inherent complexities of both work and life. Part 6, the inner citadel, power over your mind. A quiet reflection often proves to be the most potent part of any journey, doesn't it? After wrestling with these robust ideas from the systems leader about the inherent necessity of holding opposing tensions, the profound wisdom of valuing people as long-term assets, and the unwavering anchor of purpose and trust in a clamorous, often chaotic world, a particular thought from Marcus Aurelius keeps returning to me, like a gentle, persistent hum in the background of my often too busy mind. He once wrote, and it's become a kind of personal mantra for me in moments of perceived overwhelm and internal conflict. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It's a deceptively simple sentence, yet it carries the weight of centuries of distilled wisdom, and it feels incredibly relevant to everything the systems leader talks about. Because no matter how complex the system we're operating within, whether it's a global corporation grappling with market forces, a small team battling a tight deadline, or the intricate, often unpredictable ecosystem of our own family life, the ultimate anchor, the true point of stability, is always found within ourselves. We simply cannot control the market fluctuations that impact our jobs, the sudden project deadlines that drop into our laps with little warning, the unexpected arguments that erupt in our homes, or even, sometimes, the simple, baffling fact that our child decides they absolutely, unequivocally do not want to wear socks today, despite it being 3 degrees outside and snowing. These are the outside events Marcus speaks of. They unfold according to their own logic, their own set of causes and effects, often completely indifferent to our plans, our preferences, or our fervent wishes. They are external, beyond our direct command, part of the indifferent flow of the universe. The profound shift comes, as Marcus suggests, when we truly realize that our power lies not in coercing these external realities into submission, not in trying to bend the world to our will, but in exercising sovereignty over our own internal landscape. This isn't about ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine with a forced, placid smile. It's about a deeper understanding that while the external circumstances are what they are, beyond our direct influence, my response to them, my judgment of them, my attitude toward them is entirely up to me. Will I meet a sudden, high-stakes system outage at work with panic, frustration, and a flurry of unthinking reactive decisions? Or with a calm, systematic approach to troubleshooting, engaging my logical faculties and trusting my team? Will I react to a child's unexpected tantrum with anger and exasperation, or with patience, a clear intention to teach, and an underlying current of unconditional love? My mind holds the key to these choices. This realization, this acceptance of where my true, unassailable power lies, is where an incredible, quiet strength truly emerges. Think about the both-and principle we discussed from the systems leader. The inherent demand to hit short-term targets while simultaneously fostering long-term innovation. This persistent tension isn't going to magically disappear from the modern workplace. It's a fundamental characteristic of the environments we inhabit. My power isn't in eliminating that tension, which would be a fool's errand. Instead, my power lies in how I choose to frame it, how I choose to engage with it mentally. Do I view it as an impossible burden that will inevitably lead to compromise and personal failure, constantly feeling inadequate? Or do I consciously choose to see it as an opportunity to sharpen my judgment, to practice creative problem solving, to find that sweet spot where immediate needs are met without entirely sacrificing future potential? My mind can choose either interpretation, and that choice dictates my stress levels, my effectiveness, my sense of control, and ultimately, my well-being. If I let the external pressure dictate my internal state, if I allow my inner world to be merely a reflection of the outer chaos, I become like a leaf tossed about by the wind, at the mercy of every gust. But if I consciously choose my mental stance, if I cultivate that inner fortress, I become like a deep-rooted tree, swaying with the storm but not breaking, anchored in its own stable core. This perspective also ties directly into the insight about valuing people as long-term assets. When a colleague makes a mistake, perhaps a costly one, or when a family member struggles, makes a poor choice, or has a bad day, the external event is their action or their difficulty. My power isn't to prevent them from being imperfect, fallible humans. That's an unrealistic expectation. My power is over my mind, how I interpret their actions, how much empathy and understanding I choose to extend, how I decide to respond. Do I see their error as a personal affront, a mere cost on my time or effort, leading to frustration and resentment? Or do I, in line with Marcus Aurelius' wisdom of the beehive, see it as an opportunity for coaching, for growth, for reinforcing trust, for remembering that what is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee? This mental shift, this deliberate choice of perspective, changes everything. It transforms a potential source of frustration and blame into an opportunity for constructive engagement, for building stronger bonds, for reinforcing that resilient human system the book so wisely advocates for. And then there's purpose and trust, those inner anchors against the maelstrom of modern life. In a noisy world where external validation, fleeting trends, and quick wins scream for attention, it's incredibly easy to get swayed, to lose our bearing, to become distracted. My mind can easily chase the superficial applause, the immediate gratification, the fleeting praise of others. But if I realize that my true, enduring power is over my own intentions, over my unwavering commitment to my deeper purpose, then I can intentionally steer my thoughts away from those external distractions. I can choose to focus on the consistency of my actions, on the integrity of my decisions, on building that inner citadel Marcus spoke of, regardless of whether the external world immediately cheers or criticizes, rewards or ignores. This deliberate mental discipline allows me to remain steady, to build trust through consistent, values-aligned behavior, and to act in alignment with my deepest principles, even when it's the harder path, even when it demands more courage and patience. It's in these everyday moments, these small, constant negotiations with the raw, unpredictable reality of life, that the truth of Marcus's words really hits home for me. When my daughter's innocent morning question about playtime coincides with an urgent work ping that demands my immediate attention, I can feel the tension, a visceral pull in two directions. I can't change the arrival of the ping, or her deep-seated desire for connection. But I can choose how I think about that moment. I can choose to feel guilty and overwhelmed, paralyzed by conflicting demands. Or I can choose to acknowledge the tension, take a deep breath, and make a conscious, deliberate decision about my immediate response and how I'll address both needs. Perhaps it means setting a firm but loving expectation about rescheduling playtime for a definite later time, and then fully committing to that plan. That's exercising power over my mind. That's finding strength not in the absence of external challenges, which is a fantasy, but in the internal fortitude to meet them with deliberate, purposeful thought and action. It's a quiet strength, often unseen by others, a power that resides within us all, but deeply felt once cultivated. It's the strength to respond rather than react, to choose wisely rather than simply being swept along, and to find a profound sense of peace and groundedness amidst the swirling currents of life's incessant demands. It's the realization that true freedom isn't about a life without problems or paradoxes, but about the freedom to decide how you will face them, how you will interpret them, and how you will act in their presence, making your mind the ultimate anchor in any storm. Part 7. Mapping pressures for intentional action. That quiet reflection, that moment of realizing our power lies over our own mind, not outside events, is profoundly powerful. It's the bedrock, isn't it? It grounds us in the face of external chaos, reminding us where our true sovereignty lies. But for many of us, myself included, the natural, immediate next question that springs to mind after such a profound realization is often, okay, I've realized it. I understand the theory. I get that my mind is the anchor, the inner citadel, capable of choosing its response regardless of external storms. Now what? How do I translate that internal shift, that profound understanding, that Stoic wisdom, into something tangible, something I can do when the competing demands are still swirling around me like a tempest? How do I actually apply the wisdom of the systems leader in the practical, often messy, reality of daily life, when the pressures aren't just abstract thoughts, but actual tasks, people, and deadlines that demand my action? This is where the systems leader nudges us towards a wonderfully practical extension of its philosophy, one that, perhaps surprisingly, resonates deeply with a structured, almost engineering-like approach to problem solving, but infused with the enduring wisdom of the Stoics. Sometimes what helps the most isn't a grand, sweeping strategy or a revolutionary new tool that promises to magically solve everything, but simply to pause and map the pressures. I mean, quite literally, to take a pen and paper or open a plain text document and explicitly write down the opposing forces that are making you feel stuck, that are creating that internal tug-of-war. On one side, you might write, "Deliver now," representing the urgent, immediate demand for results, the deadline looming, the fire to put out. Directly opposite it, you might jot down "Build for later," symbolizing the long-term investment, the foundational work, the preventative measures, the strategic thinking. Or perhaps "Be firm" versus "be kind," particularly relevant in parenting or leadership scenarios where boundaries and empathy both vie for attention and can feel mutually exclusive. Another common tension might be global strategy versus local adaptation, or efficiency versus resilience. The very act of externalizing these often amorphous internal tensions, of pulling them out of the swirling anxiety and undifferentiated noise in your head and committing them onto a physical or digital page, does something remarkable. It immediately makes them less overwhelming, less like an abstract, unsolvable problem, and more like distinct, manageable weights. Think of it this way. When you're at the gym and you see two heavy plates loaded on either side of a barbell, you don't panic. You recognize them for what they are, the challenge, the specific load you need to manage. You then engage your muscles, your technique, your focus, and your breath to lift them, consciously balancing the force on both sides. You don't try to make one plate disappear. You learn to work with both, to integrate their presence into your movement. Similarly, when you write down these opposing pressures, you stop seeing them as mutually exclusive choices, as an either-or dilemma that forces you to sacrifice one for the other. Instead, they become forces that need to be held, navigated, and balanced, which is precisely the core message of the systems leader. It's about cultivating the capacity to hold both ends of the tension simultaneously, rather than allowing yourself to be torn helplessly between them. This simple, yet powerful practice also aligns beautifully with certain Stoic principles. The Stoics often encouraged a rigorous form of self-examination, a journaling practice, a premeditation of evils, not to wallow in negativity, but to consciously review the day's events, our reactions, and our intentions. By explicitly naming the tensions we face, we're not just complaining about them or letting them fester. We're clarifying what is truly external, what is indifferent in Stoic terms, beyond our control, and what is our response to it, which is entirely within our control. It's a way of bringing our judgments, our interpretations of events, into the clear light of day. When you write, deliver now versus build later, you're not just stating a fact of your job. You're setting up a mental arena where you can then consciously choose how you will respond to those demands. Will you rush the immediate delivery with a hasty, shoddy piece of work, knowing it will cause problems later and potentially increase chaos? Or will you find a way to meet the deadline with a well-considered interim solution, combined with a clear, actionable plan for the build later aspect, respecting both the urgency and the long-term health of the system? The act of mapping forces a deliberate choice, an active engagement, rather than a purely reactive one. It empowers your prohairesis, your faculty of choice, by giving it clear parameters to work with, making your decision-making more intentional and less impulsive. Let me give you a personal example from my world in tech, a situation I find myself in regularly. I often face the tension of a critical system bug that needs immediate attention, a deliver now scenario. Production is down, users are impacted, and the pressure is intense. The business is screaming for a fix. But as I dive into the code, another pressure immediately arises. How do I fix this quickly and effectively without introducing new bugs or making the system even more fragile, complicated, or harder to maintain in the long term? That's the build for later or maintain system health tension. My initial, unthinking, reactive impulse might be to just slap on the quickest, dirtiest patch, get it working again, and worry about the technical debt and consequences later. But by consciously pausing, even for just a minute or two, and mentally or physically noting these two powerful competing forces, I can be more strategic, more stoic in my approach. I might implement a small targeted hotfix that gets the system running again, knowing full well it's a temporary measure. But crucially, because I've explicitly acknowledged the build for later tension, I immediately follow up by creating a detailed technical debt ticket or scheduling a deeper dive with my team to properly refactor the underlying issue that caused the bug. I'm not just solving the immediate problem, I'm consciously addressing both ends of the tension, making a deliberate choice for each, rather than letting one completely overshadow the other. I'm delivering now and planning to build better later, effectively integrating both demands. In my family life, this mapping technique also proves invaluable, especially during those challenging parenting moments. When my daughter comes home from school visibly upset because a friend said something unkind, I feel the immediate, almost instinctual pull to be kind, to comfort her, validate her feelings, maybe even tell her that friend was wrong and she's right. But there's also the equally important long-term need to be firm, not in a harsh way, but to help her build resilience, to teach her how to navigate social challenges, to communicate that life isn't always fair, but she has the inner strength to handle it. The either-or trap here would be to either just coddle her and solve her problems for her, or to dismiss her feelings with tough love. But by acknowledging both the need for immediate kindness and the need for building long-term resilience, I can integrate my response. I can first offer comfort and validate her feelings, holding her close, listening attentively. That's the kindness. Then, once she's settled and feels heard, I can gently prompt her to think about how she might respond next time, or what she can learn from the situation, or what her options are. That's the firmness, the investment in building for her long-term emotional strength and agency. It's a dynamic process, a constant recalibration, but having those two forces explicitly named helps me navigate the interaction more thoughtfully, more purposefully. The analogy of weights on a barbell is key because it emphasizes that balance isn't a static state, a perfect equilibrium that you achieve once and then simply maintain forever. No, balance is a verb. It's an ongoing, dynamic practice. It's the continuous adjustment you make as you lift and carry the load. You'll sway, you'll stumble occasionally, you'll shift your grip. And that's not just okay, it's an inherent part of the process. The goal isn't perfection, but consistent effort and continuous improvement. This approach reduces the pressure to get everything right on the first try, and instead encourages a mindset of iteration, learning, and adaptability. It connects to modern habit science in that it makes the abstract process of managing complexity into a concrete, repeatable action. You're building a habit of metacognition, thinking about your thinking, and designing your responses rather than just reacting impulsively. This, in turn, can significantly reduce decision fatigue by providing a clear framework for action, and it strengthens your internal resolve by making your choices more intentional and aligned with your broader purpose. So, this practical extension from the systems leader, profoundly reinforced by ancient wisdom, suggests that when you feel caught between conflicting demands, don't just stew in the overwhelm or frantically try to eliminate one side of the equation. Instead, take a moment, name the forces, write them down, see them for what they truly are. Not insurmountable problems, but challenges to be lifted, balanced, and integrated. This simple act can transform your approach from one of reactive struggle to one of deliberate, purposeful engagement, making you not just more effective in your daily tasks, but also more resilient, more serene, and ultimately, more in control amidst the relentless noise and inherent paradoxes of modern life. Part 8. Complementary reads for systems thinking and leadership. If the systems leader has sparked something in you, if these powerful ideas about navigating paradox, valuing people deeply as the bedrock of resilience, and anchoring your actions in purpose and trust truly resonate, then you might be interested in exploring a few other books that touch on similar currents, often through different, yet complementary lenses. These are titles that have personally helped me think more clearly and act more deliberately about the very tensions we've been discussing, building on the profound framework that the systems leader so elegantly lays out. They aren't just business books, in my view. They're guides for living thoughtfully and purposefully in a world that often demands thoughtless, reactive responses to its complexities. First up, if the idea of building trust and creating an environment where people truly thrive, where they are seen as invaluable long-term assets rather than disposable short-term costs, grabbed your attention, then I'd wholeheartedly recommend Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. You might know Sinek from his incredibly popular Start With Why TED Talk, where he emphasizes the importance of purpose. But Leaders Eat Last delves into the practical, day-to-day realities of how true, empathetic leadership fosters what he calls a circle of safety within an organization. It's a powerful and deeply human argument for psychological safety, genuine empathy, and servant leadership, illustrating how these qualities aren't just nice-to-haves or fluffy HR concepts, but are absolutely fundamental to a team's resilience, its capacity for innovation, and its ability to weather unforeseen challenges. Sinek talks compellingly about the very real, biological basis of trust, the oxytocin and serotonin that make us feel safe, connected, and bonded with our tribe, and how leaders, through their daily actions and decisions, can either consciously foster or inadvertently inhibit these natural human connections. For me, reading clarified why investing in people isn't just a moral imperative, but a deeply practical, strategic, and sustainable one. It's not just about managing tasks and outputs. It's about nurturing the very human beings who execute those tasks, making them feel secure enough to take calculated risks, admit mistakes without fear of reprisal, and genuinely collaborate without reservation. This resonates profoundly with the Stoic understanding of our interconnectedness, that what is good for the beehive is ultimately good for the bee, as Marcus Aurelius put it. Sinek shows how a leader's willingness to put their people first, to quite literally eat last in the metaphorical sense of sacrificing immediate personal gain for the well-being of the group, creates a profound sense of loyalty, commitment, and mutual support that can empower a team to overcome virtually any obstacle. It paints a vivid picture of how a leader's actions directly shape the emotional and psychological landscape of their team, influencing everything from daily productivity and creative problem-solving to long-term adaptability and overall happiness. It's about designing a system, much like the systems leader suggests, where people naturally want to contribute their absolute best, not out of fear or compulsion, but out of a shared sense of belonging, purpose, and deep trust. In my own experience, I've seen this in action. When a manager steps up to take responsibility for a team's mistake, rather than shifting blame, the trust in that team solidifies in an almost unbreakable way. It creates a space where people feel safe enough to experiment, to fail fast, and to learn, knowing their leader has their back. This isn't just theory. It's the lived reality of building high-performing, resilient human systems. And it directly relates to fostering that both-and environment where strength is paired with empathy. Then, if the both-and principle, the inherent challenge of holding conflicting demands, managing paradoxical tensions, and developing sound, actionable strategy amidst constant chaos, really spoke to you, I'd strongly suggest Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rumelt. This book is an absolute masterclass in what constitutes genuine, effective strategy versus mere platitudes, wishful thinking, and fuzzy, ill-defined objectives. Rumelt argues with incisive clarity that bad strategy is tragically commonplace, often disguised as lofty goals or generic visions, but critically lacking a coherent approach to overcome real, specific challenges. He champions clarity over slogans, pushing us to rigorously identify the critical problem, craft a guiding policy that addresses it, and then design a set of coherent actions that align with that policy. This directly connects to the systems leader's emphasis on purpose and navigating tensions with intentionality and disciplined thought. It's not enough to simply have a goal. You need a clear, actionable plan to get there, acknowledging the inherent trade-offs along the way. When you're trying to balance the seemingly contradictory demands of short-term results with long-term innovation, or the need for strength with the imperative of empathy, Rumelt's work provides an invaluable mental toolkit for cutting through the organizational noise and developing a focused, actionable plan that acknowledges and addresses both sides of the paradox. It teaches you to dissect the weights on the barbell, as we discussed in the previous segment, understanding each force distinctly so you can apply the right leverage. For someone in my field, where we're constantly bombarded with technical choices, evolving requirements, and competing business imperatives, Rumelt's methodical and logical approach offers a profound grounding force. It helps to ensure that when I'm coding late into the night, balancing the immediate bug fix with the critical need for future system stability, I'm doing so not just reactively, but as part of a well-considered, coherent strategy. It's a book that demands intellectual rigor, pushing you to think deeply, precisely, and honestly about the challenges you face, much like a Stoic would urge you to examine your judgments and perceptions with unsparing self-honesty, stripping away illusions. It's about not just doing things, but doing the right things, and knowing why you are doing them, thereby reducing wasted effort and dramatically increasing overall effectiveness and impact in complex systems, allowing you to maintain your composure when others are simply flailing. Much like Seneca would advocate for a consistent, rational approach in the face of uncertainty. And finally, another gem from Simon Sinek, one that perfectly encapsulates the long-term, purpose-driven mindset so central to the systems leader, is The Infinite Game. This book introduces the powerful and refreshing concept that many of life's most important endeavors, be it business, politics, education, or even our personal journey of growth, aren't finite games with clear rules, defined endpoints, and ultimate winners and losers. Instead, they are infinite games with the sole purpose of perpetuating the game itself, of continuing the play. This idea deeply resonated with the Stoic perspective that life itself is a continuous practice, a journey of development, not a race to a static finish line or a single win. The Stoics were not about achieving a perfect state of happiness in one grand final triumph, but about the daily, consistent effort to live virtuously, to improve one's character, to contribute to the common good, and to navigate life's challenges with inner resilience. The infinite game challenges the pervasive finite mindset that often dominates corporate culture, the obsession with quarterly earnings, market share wins, and aggressively beating the competition, and argues that true leadership, effective systems leadership, is about building something that endures, fostering a just cause that inspires loyalty, and continuing to play for the long run, even when the immediate scores might not look favorable. This directly mirrors the systems leader's call to nurture long-term innovation and unwavering purpose over chasing fleeting, short-term gains. It's about understanding that the game of being a good parent, for instance, or building a stable and meaningful career, or contributing to a thriving team, doesn't have a final score where you can definitively say, "I've won," and then stop. There's no final medal. Instead, it's about finding fulfillment in the ongoing practice, in the continuous effort to be better, to adapt, to connect, to contribute, and to evolve. It's a powerful reminder that our focus should be on building enduring capacity and a compelling shared purpose, ensuring that the system, whatever it may be, our family, our team, our community, continues to flourish generation after generation, or sprint after sprint. For me, thinking about my work as an infinite game helps to mitigate the stress of individual project failures or setbacks, reframing them as learning opportunities within a larger, ongoing mission. It makes the daily grind feel less like a series of isolated battles and more like a continuous, purposeful journey. These books, taken together, offer a rich tapestry of complementary ideas, all reinforcing the central message that effective and fulfilling navigation of life's inherent complexities lies not in futilely trying to eliminate opposing forces, but in understanding, embracing, and skillfully integrating their dynamic interplay, always with an eye toward sustainable purpose and enduring well-being for the whole system. Part 9. Finding steadiness amidst crisis. After all the exploration of these intricate ideas, the inherent challenge of the both-and mindset that demands we embrace paradox, the profound value of seeing people as long-term assets rather than disposable costs, and the unwavering anchor of purpose and trust in a clamorous, often chaotic world, it all coalesces, for me, into one single powerful thought. It's a note I've scribbled in the margin of my own life, a distillation of what the systems leader has whispered to me through the constant noise and competing demands of my everyday existence. It's this: crisis doesn't ask us to choose sides, it asks us to stand steady between them. Think about that for a moment. In those moments when everything feels like it's unraveling, when the pressure mounts from all directions, be it a critical system failure at work, an unexpected family emergency, a personal health scare, or just the relentless grind of everyday responsibilities tugging at your attention, our natural human inclination is often to simplify. We want to find the single culprit, the one thing to fix, the one side to pick in a perceived conflict. We crave an either-or solution, because that feels clear, actionable, and less overwhelming. Do I focus solely on the immediate emergency, sacrificing everything else that matters? Or do I ignore the urgent in favor of the truly important, but perhaps less visible, long-term health? This binary thinking, this desperate desire for simplicity, is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism, a way for our brains to cope with complexity by reducing it to manageable, albeit often misleading options. But the systems leader, reinforced by countless hours spent wrestling with the ancient Stoic texts, argues that this instinct, while understandable, often leads us astray, leaving us feeling fragmented and ineffective in the long run. A true crisis, by its very nature, is rarely simple. It is a confluence of competing demands, of paradoxical needs that cannot simply be untangled, ignored, or wished away. When a critical system goes down in my job, for instance, there's the immediate, urgent need to restore service now, because users are impacted, money is being lost, and the business is in pain. But there's also the underlying, equally critical need to understand why it failed, to prevent future occurrences, and to do so without burning out the team or introducing even greater fragility into the system through hasty, ill-considered fixes. When a child is melting down in a public place, there's the urgent need to stop the tantrum now for your own sanity and perhaps to avoid embarrassing stares. But there's also the deeper, long-term need to teach emotional regulation, to build a foundation of trust and understanding, and to help them process their feelings in a healthy way. These are not sides to choose between, as if one is right and the other wrong. They are interconnected realities that demand a more sophisticated, integrated response. To stand steady between them is not a passive act of indecision, a paralysis born of conflicting options. Far from it. It's an active, deliberate stance, a testament to internal resilience, clarity of purpose, and disciplined judgment. It's about cultivating that inner citadel Marcus Aurelius so often spoke of, a fortress of the mind, built through reason, self-discipline, and virtue, designed to be impervious to the storms of external circumstances and the clamor of conflicting demands. It means exercising your power over your mind, as Epictetus would put it, to maintain composure, rational judgment, and a steady hand when external events are screaming for a reactive emotional response. You cannot control the crisis itself or its immediate demands, but you can always control your interpretation and your response. This is the true seat of our power. This standing steady is precisely how the both-and principle comes alive in practice. It means actively integrating the urgent with the important, the short-term demand with the long-term vision, the need for strength with the imperative for empathy. It means bringing together those paradoxical elements instead of letting them tear you apart. In the heat of a production outage, this margin note is a powerful, grounding reminder for me. My immediate impulse might be to frantically try every quick fix, to push my team to their absolute limits, to sacrifice everything for the now. But standing steady between them means acknowledging the desperate need to get things back online, and the critical need to protect my team's well-being, preserve our shared knowledge, and safeguard the system's long-term stability. It means taking a much-needed breath, mapping the pressures as we discussed, and consciously asking, okay, we need to solve this now, but how can we do it in a way that aligns with our purpose of building robust systems, and in a way that truly respects our people as valuable assets, not just disposable cogs in a machine? This might mean implementing a quick, targeted hotfix to stabilize things immediately, but then, crucially, following it up with a dedicated postmortem and an immediate plan to address the root cause, rather than simply moving on. It might mean acknowledging the stress, offering genuine support to the team, and clearly communicating the why behind our efforts, rather than just barking orders and expecting compliance. It's a conscious, deliberate effort to hold both the urgent and the important, the short-term and the long-term, the strength and the empathy, without letting one annihilate the other. This quiet courage, this profound wisdom, changes everything. It's the constant act of balancing those weights on the barbell, not wishing they'd disappear, but getting stronger by lifting them with intention and a clear mind. It reminds me that true leadership, whether at work or at home, is about navigating complexity with a steady hand, guided by an unwavering inner compass, rather than succumbing to the temptation of false, simple choices. It's about being grounded, resilient, and purposeful, no matter how intense the storm. Part 10. From Systemic Leadership to Individual Influence. The systems leader reminds us that true leadership is not about picking one side over another, but about holding steady, keeping clarity, purpose, and balance right in the middle of opposing tensions. The world is full of paradoxes. We're asked to deliver short-term results while also nurturing long-term innovation, to be both strong and compassionate, to hold a global vision while adapting to local realities. A systems leader is someone who can stay grounded in the midst of these contradictions, turning them from sources of conflict into sources of strength for the entire organization. The book also emphasizes that people are not short-term costs, but long-term assets. Investing in reskilling, preserving knowledge, and building trust are what allow organizations to stay resilient in times of change. Above all, the systems leader insists that purpose and trust are the anchors of real leadership. When actions align consistently with values, when clarity and integrity are maintained, leaders build the kind of trust that no crisis can shake. Trust that becomes the most valuable currency of all. In our next session, we'll shift the lens from systems to the individual with Daniel Priestley's key person of influence. But for now, the key takeaway is this: strong systems are built on steady people, those who can remain clear, calm, and trustworthy no matter the storm. If you found this reflection helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. It really helps me continue bringing you thoughtful content like this.